pandemic, they probably want it pretty bad.
They probably want it pretty bad, but I don't know if the school's gonna want it that bad.
I don't know.
I don't know.
What's your opinion on this stuff, Austin?
Say that again?
What's your opinion on this?
Oh, yeah.
On snow, what's your opinion on snow?
Yeah, I just find it hard to believe that they haven't canceled classes.
That's what I thought. Yeah, they said teacher discretion.
Teacher I didn't even see that much.
Yeah,
I
it's,
don't know, they texted the already.
I was a little upset when I had to leave this morning.
Just
Driving out there.
I mean, me too.
I think we could have just said, most of us waited until 8:40 and we're like, well, let's get ready for class. Except for Colson. Colson lives in the. I've never seen you not in this building.
Well, we are here, and again, thank you all for being here. That shows dedication. If anything, I mean, that really shows dedication, so I'm really pleased with that. We'll get started today, and we'll get into talking about borrowed chords, modally mixed chords, that is, and we'll see if we can get your mind maybe off of this weather outside just for a little while, and then after we're done, then you can do whatever you want.
Go back outside.
Yeah. So,
Well, we're gonna.
okay, I'm going to start by returning some homework, and I must say, though, grades were very good on this review handout because nobody got less than a B minus, I believe.
Wow, thank you.
Yeah, so all A's and B's, which was very nice to see. Very nice to see.
I had to brush my teeth in the bathroom, it was gross.
At least you ever seen it.
I don't currently,
At least you ever seen that.
no, we're supposed to do it tomorrow,
I
no.
brush my teeth in my room.
At least you should take a.
My sink has its own room.
Let's take a
In
selfie.
your room.
Take a selfie.
Just don't live in Bowen, don't it?
Oh, mine's true.
Huh?
Good.
Yeah, I
Bowen is fun if you really like living like community style, because everyone on
And
this
so
board
I
is
was
getting
like,
so close.
and they're like, oh, you
You know, that's why I like you. So let me.
no. Actually, I'm kind of a chamber choir.
I got really.
And I got here, I literally got here, so I could have been on.
Cause I.
Lady, put your hand.
I picked it up to you.
I didn't realize that. I'm good. Yeah, I got two brothers.
It's just like, just like, it's just a good.
Yeah. All right, if you haven't already, could you take out your workbook and open up to page 203? For today, we had spelling some borrowed chords. We had some analyzing a few borrowed chords on page 204. And then we had analyzing some chords in an orchestra setting on page 205, which is always interesting. You got to remember on page 205 that the clarinets in B flat, they sound a major second lower than this. So that would actually give you the sounding pitch. And I believe those are the only ones that really transpose, aside from the ones in the double bass, but those are just an octave, so that wouldn't affect the pitch, so to speak. All right, so I would like to see if anyone has any questions about spelling any of the chords on 203 or analyzing on 204. My goal for today was to collect just page 203 and 204, but not page 205. Okay. We'll talk about page 205 later on, but addressing 203 and 204. Did you remember, for the selected problems that I assigned, did you remember to include an accidental or an accidentals on these chords as necessary? Remember, modally mixed chords are chromatic chords. They do not belong to the key in which they're found. They belong to the key of the opposite mode. That's where they come from. So for instance, the very first one in A major on page 203, the chord you're spelling really comes from A minor. But you're spelling it in A major with A major's key signature. So you have to use an accidental or more as necessary to still get it to be spelled as the right type, the right quality, and that is a half diminished seventh chord. Okay? Yeah, so now's a good time for questions if you have any. Yes.
Can I put number 5 on 203?
On 203? Yes, absolutely. Let's take a look. That one is in the alto clef. Mm-hmm. And it looks like we're in E major. Oh, and did you include key signatures for all these? That would be great. Let's see, yeah, okay, so F sharp, C sharp, G sharp, and D sharp. And we're supposed to spell a 2 diminished 6. Now normally the 2 chord in major keys, you may recall, is just a minor triad. So why in the world is this a diminished triad? Well, it's coming from E minor, the parallel minor key. So it's going to require an accidental because it doesn't exactly fit squarely in E major. To spell a diminished triad on scale degree 2 in E major, the root is going to be F sharp. Then you're going to need an A, and then you're going to need a C natural. C natural to make it diminished. Putting it in the proper inversion, the A is going to be on the bottom of the chord, so I can put that right here. That's an A. And here's my C natural, and then I can put the F sharp right up there. And that's one good way that I would finish that problem up and spell that chord. But remember, the accidentals are all important here. Otherwise, you know, why bother borrowing a chord from the parallel mode, right? It's not going to sound any different if you forget the accidental. Yeah.
Do we have to put the key signature, like I just put it, like I just put accidental as the key signature? Or would you like us to put like?
I would like you to put the key signature. It would make me able to grade it a lot quicker because I have the key signature and then I have the respective accidental or whatever. Yes? Same page?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Let's see here. Number 3 is in the treble clef. And we are in D flat major, so 5 flats in the key signature. And we're trying to spell a tonic 6/4 or 1/6/4, but it's a minor 1/6/4. It comes from the theoretical, yes, the theoretical key of D flat minor. D flat minor. So, spelling a D flat minor triad is going to be D flat, F flat, A flat. And putting it in the proper inversion with the right accidental, I'm going to have the A flat on the bottom, so there's an A flat, there's a D flat which is in the key signature, but I need to put a flat on the F. If it's spelled correctly. Yeah, it's a borrowed. It's borrowed from D flat minor. Good. Anything else? Either on this page or the next page, 204. Remember, it might seem kind of weird, but you know, on page 204, if you have, you know, a minor 4 chord in a major key, it normally doesn't make sense, but now it kind of does because it's just, we know that it's just being borrowed from the opposite mode, the parallel mode. Yeah.
On 204.
On 204? Okay. Rather than write the chords out onto a grand staff, let me just write the pitch letter names. We're in the key of A flat major, and we have D flat, we have F flat, and we have B flat, and those are our only 3 notes, chord tones in number 1. Okay. Looking at the type of triad we have here, B flat, D flat, F flat, that is a diminished triad. A diminished triad. The root is B flat. So in the key of A flat, I guess I should have made a little more space here. It's a 2 diminished, yes, in first inverted, that's right.
We also do number 3.
Number which one?
3 on 204.
3, okay, yeah. All right, so here we have A, And we have, I'll just put them in order: C, E flat, and G flat. That is a fully diminished seventh sound. Okay? And we're in the key of B flat major, and we're asked to analyze it. Normally in major keys, we get a 7 half diminished 7. But in minor keys, we get a 7 fully diminished 7. And so that's where this rightly comes from. It comes from B flat minor. So I would just analyze it though as a 7 fully diminished 7. The Roman numeral is sufficient to indicate the borrowed chord or the modal mixture. You don't need any special symbols or anything like that. Just like if you're in a major key, when you have to analyze something as a minor 4, we understand that that just is a borrowed chord. It comes from C minor. You don't need any other special symbols with your Roman numeral. That's enough to indicate the modal mixture. If you could make sure your name is on the page somewhere and just try to neatly tear it out of your workbook, I'll come collect it. We're just going to do a few more brief spelling problems of borrowed chords on the board, and then I think I'll come back and look at the workbook page 205. Let's see, where am I? Here we go. So I have a couple up on the board over here, and we'll just spell these together. Let's get a little more practice. In the first measure here, the key of D major, I would like you to help me spell a 2 half diminished 6/5. And I hope you realize that a 2 half diminished 7 chord comes from the minor mode. So this 2 half diminished 6/5 will really come from D minor. That's how we explain it. Okay? Now, what is scale degree 2? E. Yeah, E. And how do we spell a half diminished 7? G, B flat, and D. Good. Putting it in first inversion means the G is going to be on the bottom, but I'm going to have to remember to put a flat on my B. So G, B flat, and D, and E. And that should take care of it. Remember, a half diminished 7th chord is minor third, major third, if you think of it that way. Whereas the fully diminished 7th chord is minor third, all the way down. Okay, the next one, it looks a little funny, but how do I spell a major tonic chord in B minor? Well, root position shouldn't be all that bad. It's going to be B, D sharp, F sharp. So I got to make sure I add the critical accidental there. And the raised third in the tonic chord in a minor key, what's the famous name for that? Picardy third. That's right, the Picardy third. Okay, great. Now, something that I want to introduce you to, and it's just a logical extension of spelling these types of borrowed chords, and that is this. If you were to, do I still have it? Yeah. If you were to look at this handout that I gave you the other day, all of these Roman numerals, all of these borrowed chords down here, all of them except for tonic chords and diminished chords can be preceded by secondary chords. Okay? So borrowed chords can be tonicized by secondary dominants and secondary leading tone chords. All of them except for, obviously, like this cannot be tonicized by a secondary chord, right? Because a secondary dominant of 1 is just a regular dominant. Yeah. And remember, secondary chords can only tonicize major and minor chords. They can't tonicize diminished chords, because diminished chords can't even, for a moment, they can't even temporarily sound like tonic. Okay? So I guess what I'm trying to say is, let's go back to D major. And it's not uncommon, well, it's not frequent, but it's not uncommon now to see something like this. What if I asked you to spell this chord?
That looks gross.
Ugh. Yeah, you show that to a freshman, they go, ooh. Right? But we can figure this out, right? It shouldn't be a problem. What does remember, we try to find the root of the chord to the right of the slash first. Once we know that, then we can find the root of the chord we're supposed to spell. So what does a flat in front of a Roman numeral mean? The root is lowered a half step from what it normally would be. So the normal root of a 6 chord in D major is B. So the root of this chord is indicated as B what? Good. The root of this chord is B flat. Now, what's B flat's dominant? What's a perfect fifth above a B flat? F natural. That's right. Good. Now we can spell the chord. We need to spell a dominant 7 on F. Specifically F natural. Right? Because when we put it in the staff, we're going to have that key signature, and we need to override it. How do I spell a dominant 7th on F? F, A, good, C natural. Yeah, look at all those wonderful luscious accidentals. But that's the chord that's being asked for, right? A dominant of a flat 6 in this key, or a dominant 7th of a B flat chord, is an F major minor 7. F, A, C, E flat. Right? Okay. I'm not making this, I mean, this is real legit stuff. I'm not making this up. You can't have this kind of thing. Let's do one more of these. Oh, you're gonna love this. Let me put the key signature in first. This is a real humdinger of a chord.
Don't do it.
Oh, 7 fully diminished 6/5 of a flat 3.
Is that like they put it in their composition?
Well, no, I mean, they can actually put the chord in there, yeah, but we as musicians and theorists, we're the ones that find it and we analyze it.
Have you ever seen a chord like that?
You know, actually, yeah, you can find things like this. In fact, I don't know if later on in the unit, in some of our homework in the workbook and stuff, we might come across, maybe not a bunch, but we might come across one or a few of these. Maybe. I forget. But it's just simple, well, not simple, but it's just calculation, right? Calculation. Okay, so F major, what's the root of a flat 3 in F?
A flat.
Good, A flat, that's right. And now, what's the leading tone to A flat? In other words, go down a minor second. G. Just plain G. So we're asked to spell a fully diminished 7th chord on G, and then put it in first inversion. Make sure we get any necessary accidentals. Okay, so over here I'm going to spell a quick fully diminished seventh chord on G. G, B flat, D flat, F flat. All minor thirds. Putting it in first inversion says I can have the B flat on the bottom, and the B is already flat from the key signature, so I need D flat, I need F flat, and just plain G. And that should satisfy it and have that chord spelled correctly. So, you can probably assume, safely assume, although there won't be a whole lot, there might be one, but on the upcoming test, whenever that is, it's not fair game for me to ask you how to spell a borrowed chord with the right accidentals, or maybe even ask you how to spell one of these. But I think if you understand what the symbol means, oh, this is just a borrowed chord and this is just its leading tone, and if you know how to calculate the roots correctly, and then calculate the chord correctly, put it in the right inversion, and remember the accidentals, well, then you're home free, right? It's just, it's only that. That's all you got to do. No, I don't want to minimize it. It's not the easiest thing. You just have to make sure you're paying attention, that you're focused, and that you check your work. Okay, does anyone have any questions about how to spell these things? Yes?
Do we need to worry about doing the opposite, like identifying the notes on the stuff yet?
Not a whole lot with these.
Okay.
With these, yes. Like for instance, part of your next homework assignment is going to be to analyze some measures of a piece in the workbook. And even though you may be in a major key for that piece, I don't want you to shy away from analyzing a chord that you might think, well, that doesn't belong. Because you're going to be coming across now chords that belong to the opposite mode. So it's okay to analyze a minor 4 in a major key now. It's okay to analyze a 2 diminished in a major key. It's okay to have a flat capital 6 in a major key. It's okay now to see that. All right. Okay, before I forget, let's go to workbook page 205. The reason I want to go over this, not only because I assigned it and I want to show you the answers, but because I do want to play this on here once I get it queued up. Whenever we get to this part in theory, one of the reasons I love Theory 4 is that we get to hear these wonderful examples. And it's not only that the harmonic color and variety of these borrowed chords really make this passage special, but it's also the fact that I just like hearing the full sound of the full orchestra. Just even that is enough to, well, it kind of, yeah, it gets me excited. So, let's see, where do I find, hang on a second. Where do I find the, oh no, you can't see that. I was going to ask you this. Let's turn this on. Maybe I'll ask you guys. You see in the top center there, it's telling me that I'm connected to the Wi-Fi, which is what I want to be. But do you see how it's covering up some of my tabs up there? Do you know how I can get a new tab?
You're able to just drag
hidden
it.
behind there.
You're able to just like drag it over everything.
Let's see here. Maybe I can move it with this.
It can be like
Aha!
Oh.
Thank you.
name, exchange, or.
Thank you. See, you guys, that's what I need.
Lucky guess.
Okay, I need to, whoops, hang on. Let's go over here. And, okay, here's where the workbook recordings are. This is what I wanted. We're in chapter 21, and this is the first example. Let's take a listen to this, and then we'll talk about the Roman numerals.
It's 21, 1, C1.
And let the full orchestra sound just wash over you. numerals, what you should have. I hope you found a few borrowed chords in this passage. The first measure, just the first, oh, by the way, this is in C major. And the first measure is just a regular 1, and then a 4, and then a 1. Okay, those 3 chords. The second measure, I hope you just got a regular diatonic 4, capital 4. But now in measure 3, I hope you got a 1 chord followed by a flat capital 6 followed by a 1. Because it's a C major triad, then an A flat major triad, then a C major triad. How do we analyze an A flat major triad in C major? We have to call it a flat capital 6. That's what we have to label it as. Okay. Then the next measure is another flat 6. Flat capital 6. That's the whole measure. It's an A flat major triad. Then the third to last measure is a minor 4 chord. Minor 4 chord. And then the last 2 measures is all just regular capital 1, C major. Okay. So how many borrowed chords or modally mixed chords did you get in this short passage? 3, right? You got 2 flat 6 chords and you got a minor 4. And the instructions say to, I think it says, what does it say? Yeah, circle the Roman numerals of any borrowed chords. So I got them shown on mine. Really, they stick out because I got my flat 6s and my minor 4s circled. Now, to me, how much more does that make this passage special than if it was just a regular minor 6 chord a couple times and another major 4 chord? It would be okay. I mean, certainly it sounds okay with the full orchestra, but the fact that we've got those accidentals, they come from C minor. The A flat major triads, and then the F minor triad, I think that makes it just even more special. So let's listen to it again from the beginning.
Exercise 21, 1C1.
So do you think Brahms knew what borrowed chords were? These chords? Sure. He exploited them when he wanted to. He used them when he wanted to. For coloristic and harmonic variety purposes. Does anyone have any questions on this, the harmonic analysis? Remember, the only way you can really get these chords for certain is remember that the clarinets in B flat sound a whole step or a major second lower than rhythm. Okay. By the way, let me ask you, what type of cadence ends this passage? Plagal, yeah. Is it plagal if you have a borrowed 4 going to a 1?
Yes.
Yeah. Because you know what? The borrowed chords function exactly like their diatonic counterparts. So a borrowed 4 is still a predominant. And a borrowed 2, half diminished, whatever, that's still a predominant. And a borrowed tonic still has tonic function. They function and behave exactly like their diatonic counterparts. Yep.
Okay, just random question here.
Okay.
So, since we came to class in the blizzard, is there any way you can take this for like a bonus completion grade?
Whoa.
So we have a little padding on our grade for the first week?
Oh.
I lost my hat this morning. I had to run a block to get it. It fell off, it like got blown off my head as soon as I stepped out.
He has to walk here.
Well,
right now.
sheesh.
Yeah.
He doesn't live on campus. He walks like way over there.
Oh, you walked here.
I'm like a block behind Anderson over there in the park.
Well, I'll think about it. I don't know that I'm going to,
It's
but
like 5 bonus grades.
you make a good case. You make a strong case. I will give you that.
Yes.
Okay.
I'll take it.
All right. Let's go on a little bit here. I'm going to, I'm actually going to take a piece from the 21st century. And we're gonna listen to the beginning of it, and I'm gonna show you how even bands and musicians nowadays, they still use modally mixed, or they still use borrowed chords in their music. And they use them very effectively, I find out. They use them very effectively. Okay, so let's see if I can go back to this. One of the things I want to, well, let's see, before I do that, let's take a look at this chord progression that I have in blue up here. And just looking at the few Roman numerals that I have, by the way, this is in the key of G major. Can you tell me which chord is a borrowed chord? Just looking at the Roman numerals. This one right here, right? Because we don't normally get minor 4 chords in major keys. But we know that the minor 4 chord is a very frequently borrowed chord. It comes from the parallel minor. In this case, it comes from G minor. Does C minor occur in G minor? Oh yeah, very common. It's just your natural normal 4 chord. But here, the band, the musicians are borrowing it from G minor and they're inserting it in a major mode piece and they're using it. And when you listen to this, I'll point to the chords and I hope you find out that it's got a special kind of expressive quality to this chord. Okay? And I don't know if you guys, well, some of you probably know what this chord progression goes to. It goes to Green Day. So we're going to listen to a little Green Day here. You guys know Green Day? All right, so let's listen to it from the beginning here. So we're on G.
Summer has come at last. The innocent can never last. Wake me up when September ends.
Let's do it again. Repeat it.
Like my father's come to pass. 7 years has gone so fast. Wake me up when September ends.
Okay, and then they do some other things. What do you think? Doesn't that chord really just make the whole phrase?
Yeah.
Like, whoa. And it's amazing because the roots are the same. The major 4, the diatonic 4 comes first, and then all they do is they just lower the third of that chord by a half step, and we get this completely different sound, this different, kind of different feeling that we get. So major 4 followed by minor 4 is actually kind of common when composers use borrowed chords. They like to juxtapose the 2 chords and put them next to each other, adjacent to each other, to really bring out the contrast. To really bring out the contrast of those 2 chords. I have in my notes from other theory texts that the minor 4 chord is sometimes used to express bittersweet emotions. I think it does that pretty well. Okay? So, you can try this out on a piano or a guitar, but about modal mixture? I don't know, I like it. All right, let me give you a handout. We'll finish up with this handout today. By the way, I remember when I heard that chord, I was a student, a PhD student at the University of Kentucky, and it was on the radio, and I heard that, and I was like, that's a borrowed chord. I did. I'm like, I'm going to use that someday. Because it's pretty clear. No. Oh, I'm from Pluto, you know. No, that's where I lived before I came here, yeah. Originally, originally I lived I was born in Ohio. But then when I was very young, my family moved to Arizona, and that's where I grew up.
Oh.
And you went to Kentucky and then went to Florida?
Well, I went to, my undergraduate institution was in Wisconsin. Then I went back to Arizona and I got my master's degree at the University of Arizona. And then I went to Kentucky and got my PhD at the University of Kentucky. So I've kind of been all over the place.
How'd you decide where to go?
Well, you apply to schools, and the ones that offer you the best deal, you know, the best teaching assistantships, the most money, that kind of thing, that's kind of where you go.
How'd you get to Florida? I still want to know.
Say that again?
How'd you get Florida?
Well, as I was finishing up my PhD, I wasn't quite finished, but I applied for a teaching job, and it was in Florida, and they're the ones that hired me first.
What school was it?
It's called Stetson University. Yeah, if you Google Stetson University, you'll see they have like palm trees all over the campus. It's weird. Yeah, they have too many actually.
I wonder what campus is like.
We have 60-mile-an-hour winds and blizzard. So, yeah.
So, do you wish you were at Stetson for just this?
Well, no, they have hurricanes down there.
Well, I don't think they're working on it. Like even today,
I thought it was a way.
if you could wake up today and like going to teach Stetson.
Yeah, I don't know.
Day.
You know, each place has its positives and negatives. Let's take a look at the top half of this handout for a moment, please. The instructions on the top say, refresh your memory on a few things. Doubling in the 6/4 chord, contrary motion, blah, blah, blah. While you're at it, make the following adjustments. In this passage, it says there's a secondary dominant, but no accidental. Can you add the right accidental, and can you tell me what the right accidental should be? Do you see the secondary dominant on the top? Isn't it the 4th chord, right? It's a 5, 6, 5, a 4. We're in the key of G. So what's the one accidental that G, B, D, F?
F natural. F natural?
That's right, it's F natural. Yeah. That guy knows how to spell his secondary dominants.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, it's a 5, 6, 5 of a C chord. So G, B, D, F natural. Number 2, the alto is left unfinished at the end. What is the proper note that the alto must have in the last chord? And note that it's coming from a 5, 7. Okay, so where does it have to go?
B.
Yes, it has to go to the B. That's right. There's no other option for the alto. So I would write a B in the alto voice in the last chord. So aside from the secondary dominant, all these chords are basically diatonic. Something we could have dealt with easily last semester. But now if we go down to version 2, down in the bottom half, it says, like secondary dominants, modal mixture or borrowed chords require accidentals. Number 1, first of all, add the necessary accidentals to the secondary dominant and the modally mixed chord. Okay, so put the F natural back on that 5, 6, 5, or 4 like you did up top. Do you see how all of the borrowed chords that have been substituted in here at the bottom have a double asterisk on them? Okay, so let's think about this. In G major, the first borrowed chord is 7, fully diminished 6, 5. What accidental do you need to make that a fully diminished 7? Yeah, E flat, right? F sharp, A, C, E flat. So the E in the soprano needs a flat there to make it a borrowed chord. It's borrowed from G minor, the parallel minor key. What about the minor 4 chord in measure 2? What one accidental do I need to make it C minor? E flat again, that's right. Something you find in G minor's scale, but not in G major's scale. Okay? Going on, we've got in the third measure a flat 6. Here we have to add a couple Fs. Okay, E flat and B flat, yeah. You gotta make it a major triangle. So E flat, G, B flat. The next one, 2 diminished 6. It's an ACE chord. How do you make it diminished? What accidental do you need again?
E flat.
Yeah, E flat, that's right.
Is that coincidence or is that other thing?
Well, it's not coincidence necessarily. Remember, maybe I can draw a connection between this and then what we talked about last time. You remember, like, the most common chords that are borrowed from the minor mode and used in the major mode all contain lay. That's scale degree. And is not E flat lay in G minor? Yeah. So that's why these are really common. The 2 diminished, the minor 4, the flat 6, and the fully diminished 7. You got it?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so I think we did number 1. Number 2, it says complete the alto for the 6th chord. Is the alto voice going to be different than it was up above? Okay, well, you might think, yeah, it's got to be an E flat, but remember I said that borrowed chords function just like their diatonic counterparts. So really, we have, in the bottom there, we have a 5 chord going to a 6 comes right after a 5. What are we supposed to double special? Yes. So, do I want another E flat in that chord? No, because if I put an E flat in the alto, I would have an augmented second. F sharp in the chord prior going down to E flat. Yeah. Yeah, so the alto needs to go up and share the G with the soprano in that flat 6 chord. And then question number 3, are there any other options for the tenor's G in the last chord? This is just like a general part rating question. Well, what else could the tenor be on another chord tone besides G?
Maybe.
Which one, if so? Well, if it went to a D, I'd have either parallel fifths or contrary perfect fifths in the bass.
I said B.
B? Well, okay, is it better to double the third of a chord or triple the root? Triple the root, that's right. So my answer to number 3 is no, there's not really any other good options for the tenor. It's got to go to G. It's got to go to G. See if this document camera works. If it doesn't, I'm not gonna mess around with that with it. Well, I do these things. There we go. That might work. Oops, focus. I just want to show you the way I did the bottom. Now that we're talking about it. You know, this is really sneaky, but do you see this 1-6-4 chord near the cadence? Why did I have to put a natural on the tenor's B there? Because didn't I put a flat on the B in the tenor earlier in the measure? Oh, that's sneaky. Seriously, I mean, I sometimes miss that. I mean, that is really, really underhanded. Can I go ahead and play this version for you now with the borrowed chords in? It actually sounds a little bit funky to me, but some of you may like it. Compare this to the diatonic version up above. This one has 4 borrowed chords, 4 modally mixed chords in it. So we have... combination of minor and major modes in that passage. It's almost a little too strong, perhaps, I don't know. I kind of like it when composers and musicians just kind of pepper a phrase, just slightly with a little bit of modal mixture of borrowed chords. Okay, the last thing I want to talk to you about, and I'll try to do this periodically throughout the semester, is remind you and kind of keep a tally of reasons why we have accidentals now in music. There's a lot of reasons why we've got accidentals in music up to this point. Number one, and you would have known this from Theory 1, we use accidentals and very frequently because of raised 6th and 7th scale degrees in minor keys, don't we? When we're in a minor key and we have La and we have T, we have to raise those notes with an accidental, even though they're considered part of the scale. Part of the scale. Something we learned just last semester, another reason why we have accidentals in music is because of secondary chords. Secondary dominant and secondary leading tone chords. Those are chromatic chords. Those 90+% of those require at least one accidental. Okay. Number 3, and we learned this last semester too. Another reason we sometimes see accidentals in music is because the composer is trying to change key. Modulation causes accidentals to occur in music. Sometimes only one. And that's enough to bring about a change of key. And now finally, we're up to speed where we are. Another reason for accidentals in music is modal mixed chords, borrowed chords. We know that they come from the parallel mode. I can't write and talk at the same time. So I think we have 4 good solid reasons why we see accidentals in music. And as we go throughout this semester, we're going to be adding on and learning more chromatic harmonies. And so our list is going to get longer and longer gradually for reasons why we see accidentals in music. But I think it's helpful to just kind of review this, go over this, and kind of follow up on this periodically throughout the semester. So like, oh yeah, that's why we do these. I see those accidentals. I use those accidentals all the time in music. So. Okay, does anyone have any questions about anything? We're just about at the end here. All right, then the assignment for next class is workbook page 212 and 213. Page 213, you just have to do one of them on that page. I do want to make a very important point that on page 212, let me get there. Okay, on page 212, I'm asking you to analyze this passage. But on the assignment sheet, I'm asking you to analyze measures 7 through 11 only. I do not want you to analyze the last 2 measures. So, well, don't cross them out. We're going to eventually do them in class. But I want you to stop with measure 11, which is the first measure on the bottom system. The reason is because there is a key change at the very end of this passage, and we haven't learned how to analyze this kind of modulation. We're going to find out next week that the borrowed chords help us modulate to distantly related keys, to foreign keys. They're really cool in that sense. They have a lot of power. And so I just want you to stop analyzing it measure level. You may have a borrowed chord or 2 in your analysis. Don't freak out, that's normal now. And then the other one is to do number 1 on page 213. And I'll let you, that's just filling in alto and tenor voices and part writing. There are no, by the way, there are no new part writing rules for borrowed chords. So everything is still the same as we did on that handout just 5 minutes ago. Okay, I will stop talking so you can go back out to the blizzard. Hey, did you forget about the weather for a few minutes in here?
About that,
I did too.
about 205.
Oh, that's right. No, I should be quiet, sorry. But thanks for trying.
Oh, and
Congratulations.
wait, are you talking about?
As a regular, yeah, I was going to research further and check and see about
Hey, do you know
What?
Yeah, can you check out
Oh, Laura, you know this.
I have, I
Yeah.